As a portfolio manager, a former tax lawyer, guest lecturer, speaker, and mother of three, all the ideas in these videos that I'm creating are mine. I am trying to create content to allow people a place where they can learn about finance, develop a better comfort level around money and around their finances so that they can continue to learn, build their wealth in a more optimal manner, and ultimately develop financial empowerment and freedom. So I recently had the opportunity to speak to a group of women as part of a women's initiative at PSB Boisjoli, which is an awesome accounting firm. And it was one of the first times I spoke, not at a school or at McGill, but I realized what an awesome opportunity it was, because while people can learn from watching these videos, it's at another level when you're in a room with people where you feel it's a safe place, it's a safe environment. People feel comfortable asking their questions. You hear other people's questions and discussion ensues, so that you're not only learning the information, but you're kind of digesting the information and you're allowing it to come up against some of the feelings you might have about it, some of limitations that you might have historically or presently. And it's a real growth opportunity, which is instrumental in achieving this goal of enhanced financial freedom. So I wanted to bring up two questions that came up while I was there that I thought were extremely useful. I'm going to keep them high level. And the first one had to do with risk. In fact, actually both had to do with risk. The first one was a woman who said she had taken a risk questionnaire and the risk level that came out at the end felt too risky for what she felt she was comfortable with. And when I prodded a little further to ask her what she thought she felt comfortable or didn't feel comfortable with, she said that she's not comfortable investing in stocks that will just go to zero, where she will just lose all of her money. And that allowed me to talk about something called systematic or unsystematic risk. And so, of course, when we invest in the stock market, there will be volatility. So there is risk. Now, systematic risk is the kind of risk that affects the entire market. So COVID happens, the whole market goes down. That is, it affects the whole system. It's systematic risk. Then there's unsystematic risk, which affects a specific security or stock. And there are ways to protect against investing in stocks that will potentially just lose all of their value or all of their worth. Now, there's a lot of research on a lot of the companies and stocks that we can invest in. And at the end of the day, we're not investing in a stock, we're investing in a company. We're investing in an executive, a management team. We're investing in a product or a service, a business idea. We're investing in an industry or a future trend for the world. So if we invest intelligently, or if we invest somewhat less discriminately, and of course, all of this is not advice, speak to a professional, but there are ways to invest and have exposure to the stock market, be invested in stocks without worrying that the thing we invested in will just all of a sudden become worthless. Number one. Number two, there was a woman who said, I can't take risk because I grew up poor. Now, this is such an interesting point, and she's completely right. Now, I will elaborate. If you've seen my video on risk, and if you haven't, please feel free to go check it out. I try to address risk through an objective lens. So how much risk can you take? Can you afford to take if you just look at the numbers? And then how much risk are you comfortable with taking? That's subjective. So you have objective, what are you allowed or what should you take? You have subjective, what are you comfortable taking? And of course, having grown up in poverty will affect your relationship with money, will affect your subjective comfort level, your ability to have confidence, that you will never be back in that situation, for example. And so that subjective element is very important. But there's one more element. And the additional element that I always like to try to address when I'm talking about risk is understanding the impact of your decision. So understanding that if you choose to take less risk, in all likelihood, you are leaving a return on the table, and allow you to quantify that so that, maybe it's not an all or nothing game. Risk is it can be on a spectrum. And so you have to figure out what you're comfortable with and what you can do. Now, I have a client who was in a similar situation growing up and was not guided well on the risk question for a large portion of their life. And in the end, that cost them financially. So everything is relevant. And at the end of the day, what did come out from this speaking opportunity and what continues to come to the surface is that a lot of what prevents us from being comfortable with our finances, knowing about our finances, and being financially empowered and literate is more emotional or has more to do with emotions, experiences, what we're surrounded by, preconceived notions we have, than it does the actual information. Because the knowledge and the information is not overly complicated and it's available. We could Google it, but why don't we? And why don't we even ask? And why don't we even look? It's more complicated than that. So this also allows me to create a segue into the next little series of videos that I hope to make about emotions, mental health, and its relationship with money. Of course, I'm not an expert on it, but I will talk about it. I work with a lot of clients, and I am comfortable Googling it and researching and reading, and I, in fact, really enjoy it. So that's what's coming up. As usual, please do not hesitate to send me any questions, comments, feedback.